It's caucus time.
What time is it?
It's caucus time. Figure we could reverse roles today.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Welcome on in, everybody. It is caucus time. It's Thursday. I say this. It's a podcast format now, but still, people watch live when we do the recording. So, it's Thursday. It's noon, or it's whenever day it is, whatever it is.
But it's Thursday. It's noon, and we are live.
We're live. That's right. You come on over to Rumble. You find us live every week. And then you get to participate in the conversation instead of just listen to it afterward.
Noon Central, by the way.
You can do that. Yes.
Any of our podcast listeners came at a noon Eastern or noon Mountain Time or something, and we're disappointed to not find us.
Well, and there's our it's noon Central Daylight Time, soon about to become Standard Time again. Before we even get to our topic this week, dear cohort of mine, Mr. Mohan, what do you think about the subject of daylight savings time, and why is it evil and we should stop switching our clocks back and forth twice a year?
We already discussed this last time we switched the clocks?
Maybe. I don't remember.
Or it was about a year ago when, before we switched them the first time.
It's possible.
Yeah.
The switching thing is stupid. Congress, fix it. That's why we elect you. I mean, roads and bridges and taxes and stuff, but fix the clocks.
Yep.
Okay, I'm done.
It's kind of ridiculous.
This is my primary. You'd think that I'm primarily voting next Tuesday based on the waste workers of America, but that's not why I'm primarily voting. I'm primarily voting so that Congress will fix my clocks.
Yeah.
Maybe
we
Trump
should do what China does, where we just have one time zone for the entire country.
That seems, hold on, pause. In the continental United States, that would be a little ridiculous.
No, I think that'd be epic.
Well, hold on though, because you really are. I mean, well, okay. I would entertain this.
It's about as ridiculous as it is for China.
Well, that's valid. China's. I mean, if you look at it, not the what's the map model when you don't look at it where everything is blown up in a ridiculous proportion, the political maps, but you look at it the way that the countries and the continents are actually sized.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's we can get into fixing.
That is if you believe
time,
the Earth is a sphere.
Which it is.
Well, yeah, I believe that. I'm just making sure you believe that.
I believe that. There's a lot of things I don't question. That's not one. There's a lot of things let me say it this way. There's a lot of things I question. That's not one of them.
So on that, you trust the science? You trust the experts?
No,
trust Fauci
I just
when
trust.
He says the Earth is round.
I just trust science, like not the science. I just trust science on that one. I've been high enough up. I've seen the curvature of the Earth. I know how this works.
There's like a fisheye kind of lens on the plane windows. That's
okay, ice wall man. I don't believe in the ice wall either. Well, I mean there is. It's called Antarctica, but there's not an ice wall anyway.
But what's in the middle of Antarctica?
Penguins.
Really?
Well, or unless you're
I thought they were around the edges.
I don't know. Penguins. Maybe those are the ones. It's a different variety.
My concern is Apple Maps does not even let you center your view on the middle of Antarctica.
Tim Cook's never been to Antarctica.
But they can't the satellites go around? And
that's not how it works, though.
Pictures?
Tim Cook goes and takes aerial photography. Isn't that I thought he was a service-oriented CEO.
Yeah, they drop him out of a plane and he hang glides and takes pictures.
Hang glides and takes pictures. That's exactly
Tim Cook.
Thank you, Tim Cook. Well, I would say we're way off topic, but that's actually par for the course when it comes to the final 2 weeks of the 2024 election. It's just this way and that way and squirrel and then the raccoon. What? Oh my gosh. First of all, folks, don't forget, go. I don't know what all we'll have. Last week was a little bit of a lighter week because we were talking about a lot of information that was about to change, but go to unauthorizedcaucus.com. Make sure you sign up there. That's the email notifications when the podcast episodes drop, the video too, and then, of course, all the notes. That's where you're going to get all of the notes and resources that we use. So make sure that you go and sign up there. Also, go to TRexInc.com. I see T-Rex is in the chat. They were voting yesterday and had to wait 90 minutes. But T-Rex Inc., use Caucus30 for your promo code. Guess what? We're coming down to an epic 4 more years of wearing Trump swag in public, I think, and it being very necessary to continue support for the administration. That's my prediction, my guess. So I think you should go and buy that stuff, even if it doesn't get to you before Election Day. TRexInc.com. Use the promo code Caucus30 on authorizedcaucus.com. Go and sign up for this stuff there. But yeah, we're seeing it here. California, viewer from California voted yesterday. Favor keeping daylight savings time, as do I. I just leave it here. 1.5 hour wait for our lovely folks over at T-Rex Inc., but they got their vote in yesterday. Have you voted yet, or are you waiting until Election Day?
I'm going on Election Day.
So am I, because our polling locations, there are only 2 in my county, which is, I know a lot of people are like, why aren't there more? Well, I don't actually want early voting at all, but we have it, and there are 2 big ones. Why would I wait in line, is my thought, for an hour and a half and fight everyone else in the county for one of 2 spots when I could just go on Election Day and have to fight in line with everyone in my precinct? I'll take it, because in St. Louis County, I guess y'all can go to whatever whatever polling place you want. We in St. Charles still have to go to, I think we're precinct whatever, I forget, but there's like 703, 702, 705. So it's a smaller crowd. We're going on Election Day, but we're also going to be prepared to stand in line. We stood in line in 2016. I don't know, 2016, were you?
I was not old enough, no.
That wasn't even my question, but yeah, I guess you're right. Okay. Well, there you go. In 2016, us old people who voted had to stand in line farther than I can remember in most general elections. It still wasn't too bad, but it was pretty big. Yep. So this year's shaping up it's going to be the same thing.
Yeah.
Because, and that's, so you saw, this is.
I'm going to wear my T-Rex Inc. Trump tank top.
Are you going to wear it on
Trump
top
muscle shirt?
or underneath?
That's all I'm going to wear. I'm going to wear pants, obviously.
But... Thank you for clarifying pants. I was worried for a second there. I was like, yeah, you're not going to get to vote, man. They're going to kick you out. Oh, well, here's my question. So first of all, folks, this is, and I'm gonna try to shove this episode out today, later on this afternoon or tonight, because we're coming down now 5 days to Election Day from the time of recording.
Yeah, we can't wait till Wednesday.
No, shush.
Not this week.
Shush. So we're gonna push this out, but it's very interesting to me. One of the main things I've seen, the arguments, is that, well, all these voters that are casting their vote early, doesn't this just mean, and this is getting into the numbers, not of the polls. Polls don't matter anymore. Polls are garbage to begin with. You know that. If you listen to Ed's show, you should, the Pro America Report. Ted Mallock this week eviscerated polling, which is completely unscientific, much like the flat earth theory. But I'm gonna throw that nugget in there. But if you look at the early voting numbers, I've seen one of the main complaints of people is, well, wait a minute, doesn't this mean that the right is just showing up now and we're hurting our Election Day numbers, which traditionally have been strong, and usually that's where, well, the left all votes early and by mail, so that's where it comes in because they can mess with it. We've all moved over to early, so who's going to vote on Election Day now? Haven't we just taken away our numbers there? That's not the indicators that I'm seeing. We're looking at massive plus numbers. This is going to be in addition to traditional right-wing dominance on Election Day physically at the polls. That's everything that I've seen from numbers shows me that this isn't just the voters shifting. This is new voters voting in addition to the ones who always go out on Election Day. Are you seeing or feeling kind of the same thing, or am I the one who's way off into the...
Well, I mean, I don't think that you can... The data doesn't exist for you to say one way or another that either, oh, this is taking away from the traditional Election Day bump, or this is in addition to that. Like, we won't have that data till after the election.
Yeah, we'll see. But well, pretty much the best way I can find to look at everything is that we have added so many new voters that these folks who are coming out to vote don't represent a shift in where the votes are going to be cast. It represents new votes, which means I'm excited to see what Trump's total is by the time we're done. I mean, there's a meteoric rise from 2016 to 2020. He went from 65 to 74 million votes, the most ever in history, minus the great lie that is Joe Biden's 81 million that no one believes. I mean, I look at it now and say, what's Trump going to actually clock in after 74? Is he going to get 85, 90? Is he going to close in on 100? I mean, are we going to have close to 200 million people voting in this election? Holy cow. I mean, this is wild. Our county, I talked to our county elections director yesterday, actually, on the radio show, and he said we're expecting at least 75% turnout.
Wow.
So, and I mean, it's first of all, yeah, it shouldn't be wow. It's kind of terrible because it should be close to 100 every time. There's no reason for it not to be almost every one. Yeah. But this one has attracted new voters and everyone coming in to vote in ways that are just crazy.
So Trump went up about 12 million between 16 and 20. So
12? Okay.
12 million, or 11 to 12 million, kind of in the middle. So I mean, 85 million if that trend continues. 85 million votes for Trump.
Yeah, it's going to be big. It's going to be big. But as we're looking down, I've got some of the numbers here, which, by the way, one thing that I am very interested to see, it looks like, from all accounts, from early voting numbers, and assuming that Election Day will be pretty similar, the Trump campaign has broken the back of the big blue wall.
Mm-hmm.
That refers to a certain set of states that typically go blue. That one is gone at this point. But some of the voting blocks that usually go to the left, I think we talked last week, and we've talked a good bit at the black vote,
Mm-hmm.
which has shifted very, very drastically away from Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Make no mistake, I don't think Trump wins the majority of the black
Right.
vote across the country.
Well, they're both shifting,
But-
they're shifting to Trump or not voting.
But that's the thing. It's not that he's going to walk away with a majority, but I think he's going to walk away with a bigger chunk than Republicans have since the Great Society, since Lyndon Johnson. However, the Hispanic vote, that was the next big thing that was being gone after. And, because they were trying to smack down, of all things this week, they were trying to smack down the, what's his name, Kill Tony or whoever it is, the roast comedian
yeah.
at the Madison Square Garden event, which, holy cow, nearly 100,000 people in New York City downtown for a Trump event.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
You know what I've been saying about New York. I keep saying it.
That he won it in 2020?
No, that he will win it this year.
Oh, that he will. That's one of your. You think that
Yeah.
you think that Trump takes New York this year?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he
That's my
takes
prediction.
it. I don't think he takes it, but my prediction is
I
a
won't
lot
put
closer.
money on it, but that's my prediction.
I don't put money on anything. I think it's going to be a lot closer. I think. Well, they've tried to go and drive a wedge between Trump and fill in the blank, Hispanics, Puerto Ricans, whatever they've been able to use, and at each turn, that has just kind of been blown out of the water. One of the only polls I saw this week that I cared about, someone conducted a poll in Florida among 600 likely voters, Hispanic, and they found that Trump had a +2 advantage with Puerto Ricans, +28 advantage with Cubans, and +10 advantage overall with all Hispanics of every variety. I mean, +10 with all Hispanics in Florida.
Is that versus previous elections or versus Harris?
Total. Now
Total. Okay,
versus
wow.
Harris. He's winning by 10 points, the Hispanic vote in Florida, according to this one poll. And as you and I know, polls are not scientific. But again, trend lines speak something, even in the unscientific polls. And that one is just wild. That's off the charts wild. But one of the things I was paying attention to, and this I saw a big one, we've got some obviously good friends that are close to a lot of what's happening. The Turning Point USA folks have been not good friends of ours, me and Mason. I mean, people that we know inside the movement. Turning Point Action has just been going ham in Arizona. Cliff Maloney has been running PA Chase up in Pennsylvania. Scott Pressler has early vote action. And voter registration or chasing ballots, whatever it is they've been doing, has just been in overdrive for weeks now. And I saw Cliff posted, because Pennsylvania data came out. And this was interesting to me, since, again, we're now looking at voter data, early vote data. Someone talked about this, I saw a few people in the more traditional swampy side of the Republican Party on the consultant saying, oh, Trump's going to lose Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris has an 11-point lead, as best we can tell, among women voters in Pennsylvania in the early vote. An 11-point lead. And you go and look at it and start to look at all the numbers and say, wait a minute, the men are not voting early. The vast majority of them are telling pollsters, no, I'm going to vote on Election Day. And Trump has an 8-point lead with the men who are planning on going and voting on Election Day. So we're at that point where it feels like little bitty pieces or parts of data are coming out, and it is an immediate excuse for the never Trumpers or the Trump hesitant or the whoever, the people we need to stop listening to. It's an immediate excuse for them to seize and move on. Oh, look, it's not working. Like, to what end? Why is this even your message other than you want Trump to lose? That's my question.
I already stopped listening to all those people ages ago.
Well, I don't listen to them, but I pay attention to what because that's the point. You and I know, but we have this opportunity to talk about this out loud. And I know there's a lot of people who want to believe or see it, but we have to successively continue to talk to people about it.
So Trump's, and so I'm skeptical of, I think if you're going to look at betting markets as predictors, Polymarket is the gold standard. And I have expressed skepticism about Polymarket in the past, but only skepticism in that I think it overweights Harris because there's a lot, because it's exclusively cryptocurrency. So people that have cryptocurrency in the first place would want to hedge against Harris. So I think she's always her percentage is always higher than the real percentage if it were just like pure dollars and there wasn't the selection effect of the people on the market. So considering that, looking at it, Trump's percent odds of winning according to the Pauling market betting odds are higher than they were during like right after the Biden-Trump debate. When nobody even knew who the Democratic candidate was going to be. They're higher now than they were then. They're not at their peak of 70%, but they are way up there. 64% is what he's at right now, which is yeah. And I just got a text from somebody when I mentioned New York. Quote, according to all my legally immigrated African cab drivers in New York, I agree with you about New York. So we'll see. I mean, if immigrants in New York, because legal immigrants are going to be, I imagine they're pretty resentful, especially if they're in New York, as they see these floods of illegal immigrants abusing the asylum system to, get stuck in these fancy hotels at taxpayer expense, at the expense of these legal immigrants who came through the right way and have been working jobs and probably can't afford to stay in these super nice hotels and are probably just trying to make ends meet like the rest of Americans because they cast their lot in with the rest of Americans by immigrating legally. They're probably pretty resentful of the special handouts that the illegal immigrants are getting. So,
yeah, there's a lot of dynamics at play that I still maintain. I would absolutely love to see an electoral map free from all interference, free from polling interference, free from electoral fraud and interference, free from the media interference. I would love to see an actual map based on the merits. I think that tons of states would be red that aren't now, and I think a lot of others would be really close if you were just dealing with those kinds of voters. But it really is. I mean, it's incredible. And by the way, people are they're flagging it that you have called it for Trump. So there's going to be some sort of dunk tank or slime drop or something next week if you're wrong.
I literally said
I'll let the folks
when I said
decide.
I wouldn't put money on it, that means there's no stakes to my prediction.
No, the people have flagged it, man. The Rumble chat has said so. They have spoken. You all get to decide his punishment
you know what?
if he's
I
wrong.
predict Trump wins New York. I'm predicting that now.
You already predicted that. Thank you.
But now with stakes.
No, with stakes. The Rumble chat doesn't care. The Rumble chat has spoken. They flagged it.
Yes, and I am, the will of the people in the Rumble chat has spoken, and now I'm aligning myself with them.
That's good.
Here's an interesting tweet from Charles Haywood that kind of goes with what you're saying. He says, this is from 4 days ago. A benefit of Trump's momentum is it reduces the left's ability to cheat. Any left operative thinking of participating in fraud is likely to feel less enthused and also less willing to take a risk because he increasingly fears being discovered and punished after a Trump victory. So that's an interesting take right there that because we say too big to rig and that means like they can't even pull off the amount of rigging, but it also means another way to interpret too big to rig is do they even dare to try rigging if it's going to be that big of a landslide? So we'll see. I don't think there's.
Well, here's my question to that, and I'm going to find it as well to pull this up because this goes to
October 27th.
Right, and I'm looking. Hold on, let me flip back here. Charles Haywood tweets too much. There, I heard it. You said it, or I said it. I said it out loud. But yeah, so reducing, this is the specific language I want to look at. When he says a benefit is it reduces the left's ability to cheat. I'm not sure about ability, but it makes it harder for them to cheat enough to win. But also, I don't know if it reduces their motive to cheat. Honestly, and here we're back to this. So all of the indicators we're looking at, and this is actually one of them. There's two different things. All the indicators we're looking at says that even despite fraud, Trump is potentially going to run away with it next week. Electoral victory, I think it's going to be a decisive electoral victory, and I think it's likely that he may actually take the popular vote. That's my guess. However, the bigger concern is what they're going to do between November 5 and January 6 or January 20th. Those are the things that concern me, whether they're still trying to kill him, because that's certainly on the table. They haven't stopped. Or if they are trying to just delegitimize the election and say, we're not going to certify that. Those really seem to be major talking points. The other side of this is, on the flip side here, what Haywood is saying, leftist operatives thinking, yeah, I don't want to participate because I might get in trouble because he's going to win and clobber it and then throw me in jail. This kind of brings us back to, well, I think they're going to accelerate that plan of between November and January because there really is the fear now that, oh my gosh, he knows enough and he is about to come in and clean house.
Yeah.
Which is what we talked about. I need someone to be the heavy-handed executive and do the right things to clean up all the tiny tyrants that we face everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, does it look like, in your opinion, is that really more, every day we get closer to the election and beyond, is that more of a possibility for the Trump administration? It looks like they really are going to come in and do things that are necessary. And then do you think that accelerates all the chances that they're going to try to pull something crazy before he actually assumes power?
Yeah, well, this goes back to another thing I wanted to mention that I told you earlier, that Charles Haywood has a piece on the 2024 election that is, only in the print edition of Man's World magazine on passage.press. So unfortunately, we can't link it in the show notes, but I can give the Spark Notes of it because I read it yesterday and I committed it to my mind palace.
The Gen Z version of Cliff Notes?
Yeah, I guess so.
I didn't. There's a generational divide I didn't realize we had.
Yep,
Please continue.
I guess there is. So he says a lot of what you're saying about, because it's Haywood on the election, but on the election himself, on the election itself, he just says, okay, Trump is going to win it. He's going to run away with the election. What's more interesting is the interim period, where there's like 4 pages on what he talks about the interim period, in which he predicts, first and foremost, that there's going to be left-wing violence, like in 2020, because he says that 2020 showed that they can be extremely coordinated with the, pallets of bricks that we saw showing up places, Soros-funded Antifa mobs going to these cities and causing ruckuses and riots. Maybe even in D.C., we could see something like that there. He says that it will only be in leftist areas, because if it's in rightist areas, we're more likely to see more Kyle Rittenhouse type people stand up and defend their areas and say, get out of here. And he says that will serve as a pretense for the regime, the military, etc., the regime itself to step in and say, look at this chaos that Trump has caused. Our entire country is in a violent turmoil, so we need to step in to save our democracy. We're postponing the election results, etc. We're, like suspending the election essentially to install Kamala Harris. And he says that would, if they're going to do that, if they're going to do that effectively, they would have to, get control of Trump very, very quickly at the very start of that, because otherwise it spirals out of control into possibly a civil war or something like that. And B, they'd have to be successful in this coup within the span of 3 or 4 days. This can't be a drawn-out thing. They have to do it quickly, because the more drawn-out it is, the less likely it is to succeed. So Haywood's prediction is that that is most likely what the regime will try after Trump runs away with the election, in which case that will possibly spark some kind of hot conflict in the United States, which, I'm not saying I agree with his predictions, but I think that it's an interesting prediction, and I wanted to share it with you all. Because it's a very specific kind of narrative based on a lot of both historical precedent as well as the dynamics of our current political situation, and applying that to this interim period. Because we've talked a lot about what we think will happen, the possibilities, but I like how he gets really specific into it.
I agree. I do too. There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot that we have to, and that's where I'm ready to start moving. By the way, I see someone over talked. No landslide talk, please, because the red wave did materialize in 2022. No, there was no red wave. Let me say this definitively: there was no red wave in 2022. It was not expected. A lot of us fell for it, and we shouldn't have, because it was something that materialized in the minds of consultants, and it suppressed the vote, and we didn't get Congress. It was terrible. There was no real red wave in 2022. None of the indicators were there. What we're looking at is a whole different set of circumstances. Also, if anyone takes away our talking about a potential landslide next week based on what we're looking at and extrapolates it into, oh, well, then I can just not vote, or I can sit this one out, you're obviously not listening to us.
Right, we are saying go vote.
That's the point.
We need this to be huge.
Wow, look at how huge this is getting. Mash the gas pedal harder, shove it into the floor, and don't stop until we're done. And, well, never mind, I'm going to stop. There was about to be a Grand Theft Auto reference about, leftist tears and stuff. Don't stop until the leftist tears have run dry, because they don't have any more. But yeah, keep pressing. Those are two key things that are different than that. There was no red wave in 2022. It was just manufactured by the consultant class. So, well, let me switch over to an interesting thing. By the way, specifically bringing it back from the Haywood, like looking forward, bringing it back to you and me and election day. Let me remind you, this is just a side note from me. There are all the states count things differently and in different orders. So as you and I are watching polls, remember there's going to be a ton of stuff out there, and I might retweet this so that you have the cheat sheet. But don't watch the results as a horse race. That's the best thing I can think of, because every vote will be counted, but in a different way. So, for instance, like Trump will lead Virginia early in the night, and then that will start to level out as we go along. Florida will be the most Democratic earlier in the evening, because that's the mail-in and early vote. They will drop things that came in before Election Day because they're getting counted now. Boom, Florida's going to go blue and then slowly flip to the big red that we know it'll be. Trump will come in first in Virginia. You know how this works. Some places don't even count their mail-in or absentee ballots until they start on Election Day. Some are already counted. Just remember that. You're going to see huge shifts and sways, but there's going to be a leveling or a balancing out. So as you're watching, like Allegheny, Pennsylvania, Allegheny County, should have their vote in pretty quick. And watch out, because if Trump is outdoing his 2016 there with most of the vote in, then it's safe to say his odds are going to rise significantly in Pennsylvania. But that's like one key indicator across the whole state. These are just little things to look for. Georgia and North Carolina are going to have statewide results first. Pennsylvania will be slower. Obviously, Wisconsin, Michigan, all the West Coast states are going to take longer too. But I think I'm looking at Georgia and North Carolina to set the tone for the night. And I mean, if Georgia and North Carolina, Trump comes out really strong in the returns based on how those states actually work, counting the ballots and how the counties come in. Georgia and North Carolina, Trump starts beating up on everyone. I think that bodes pretty well for Pennsylvania and all the rest of the 7 battleground states, which I think ultimately it looks like he has a great ability to take all 7 and dip into some blue states as well. But just that's my reminder to you, is this is not a horse race where you're watching them all at once and your emotions are getting dragged around as it goes around. No. Different states, different counties count things differently. They already have stuff ready. You'll see big spikes, but look for those level outs. That's why the 2020 results have their famous graph that's now a meme and a t-shirt, because after stuff starts leveling out, you see the huge Joe Biden spike overnight, which is just patently ridiculous, because that makes no sense across any of the counties or states or the dynamics I just talked about. So keep that in mind as you are setting expectations for watching returns on Tuesday night.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure I put that out there. As of the rest of it, though, let me ask you this. Here's an interesting one that I pulled up. The Epic Times is talking about, swishing my hands together for everyone to get up to microphone. The Epic Times was talking about a very interesting set of research that I saw out of Axios. Axios isn't exactly what I'd call the failing leftist pile of garbage, but they are very left-wing. You laugh because you know it's probably not too far off at this point.
Yeah.
But Axios Vibes had a survey that was conducted by the Harris Poll, so these are not right-wing pollsters. But I find this interesting, and I'm curious your take on because there's no conclusion, there's just numbers. Nearly half, about 48% of Gen Z voters and 23% of U.S. voters overall claim they have lied about their voting preferences this year to people who are close to them. This is 1,800 registered voters between October 22 and 24. So it's actually a pretty big sample size. Found that 58% overall say their preferences are private.
58 or 48?
No. 58% overall say their preferences are a private matter. 33% said they aren't close to certain family members due to political beliefs. But for Gen Z voters, this is 18 to 27. That number is 44%, people who they aren't close to family because of different political beliefs. And then among millennials, 28 to 43, the number is 47%. But 48% of Gen Zers claim they have lied to someone close to them about their voting preferences. I see that number, and it tells me that Gen Z really is silently the conservative majority, because who in 18 to 27 is worried about making a claim supporting Kamala Harris or something else? I don't think that it's them not wanting to come out to their parents as a left-wing, liberal. I think these are Trump folks, Gen Z Trump supporters who don't talk about it out loud because of cancel culture, not because of boomer parents or some other thing. I look at the number, and with this return, because we've not had privacy. I mean, I remember that era. You don't talk about politics or religion. You don't tell people who you voted for. You're not allowed to ask. That's culturally, that's been gone for some time because of, the MAGA hats we're wearing and yard signs. I wonder.
Well, you especially don't talk about conservative politics because normalcy is left-wing politics.
Well, normalcy in terms of the institutions. So for 18 to 27-year-olds, for 48% of them to say they lied about their politics to someone close to them because it was different, that tells me that 48%, the vast majority of them are probably right-wingers who are closet right-wingers. They don't want to come out. They don't want to be. They want to be the silent people because they know in their school, workplace, friends, media, social media, that is not the in vogue thing. But then again, it's starting to come back that way. I don't know. What's your take as the Gen Zer at the table?
I'd like to see it broken down by gender, because I think that if a girl is lying to people around her or her family, she's probably lying to conservatives and voting on abortion. Not all of them, but generally I think that's the trend. Whereas, Gen Z men are more likely lying to their wine aunt and their sorority girlfriends, that they. Because this makes me think of there were these statistics that came out a few weeks ago about, I think it was in New York, how your political preferences impact the way a date would be going. Women were polled, and for the most part, obviously, if somebody likes Trump, that for most of them that would make the date turn south and make them less likely to want to see the guy again. So guys are going to be because women are much more selective, I think, of those political beliefs. I think guys are more likely to hide those and be dishonest about those, and generally be voting on issues I don't really know any Gen Z guys. There's definitely some out there, but Gen Z guys who are voting on the issue of abortion alone. And all the other issues that are concerning to Gen Z guys pull them to Trump.
Well, and here's your breakdown on that. I was just looking. Men, 30% were nearly twice as likely to say they lied about how they voted as women, 17%.
Okay, yeah, so that right there, and I don't want to be too reductionist on demographics here, but I do think that the trends indicate to me that the vast majority of that 31% that is lying is, lying to liberal family members or liberal friends or something like that.
That would be my assumption as well. And that's the interesting thing here. Folks, don't hear us as, again, reductionism or stereotyping. There is a reason why, you look at all these things, there's a reason why all of the polls, all the pollsters, everyone who does this stuff still breaks it down by men, by women, by age, because there are cultural norms and different things that are statistical truths. It's not an anomaly. This means something. So we're not, to Mason's point, we're not trying to reduce anyone to anything here. There is a methodology behind why it matters that you count these things, because there really are cultural norms behind it that help us explain what's going on and why.
I have seen a statistic somewhere that I want to try to find, but I think that the political gap in Gen Z, the gender gap on politics in Gen Z is the biggest in any generation at all. I've seen that graph somewhere, but is this it?
I mean, without looking at a graph, I could tell you it's true, because you look at the resurgence, and I mean, I'm just at this point, I'm repeating things you could find elsewhere on the internet, but young men particularly have just been brutalized by the modern woke culture, by media, by academics, by everything. They've been destroyed into the oblivion of the effeminate college professor stereotype that you got to see on Matt Walsh's What is a Woman? This guy who does gender studies. Young men know innately, biologically, that is not how we're supposed to be wired, I believe. From the Lord Almighty who imprinted it in our DNA, this is not how young men and young women ought to behave. And I think as they have received, particularly young men, Gen Z men, 18 to 27, as they have been shoved down, there is more of a resurgence against that cultural wokeism than we've seen in a long time. So there's a lot of resistance. Entree, frat boys holding up the flag, and this and that. Now, is some of it maybe misguided and misdirected? Yes, and we've talked about this dynamic before. Out of the huge audience of young men looking to people on the internet, finding Jordan Petersons who are kind of halfway in the right field, Andrew Tate's who are
gateway drug.
Right, but I mean, like, the problem is there's a lot of variety. Are you finding Andrew Tate, who has correctly diagnosed the problem and then is an idiot when it comes to the solutions and completely wrong with this alpha male nonsense? Or are you finding Peterson, who's correctly diagnosing the problem and touching on the right answers, but we're still missing a component there? Or are you finding the, like, serious, what do I call them, the Christian nationalist crusader mindsets who are like, no, God, family, country, get married, have children, be a good citizen, follow the Bible? Like, what version are you finding here? But the desire to be different than what has been, than the big stick that they've been beaten with over years and years and years. Millennials haven't fought against that in great numbers, but we are seeing it in Gen Z. I feel like they're saying, no, I'm done with that. Get away.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see that transfer into political opinions, motivations as well. Anyway, that's interesting. Let me check on the chat here real quick. By the way, you want to talk about T-Rex arms for a second.
T-Rex arms? Don't you mean
T-Rex arms, T-Rex Inc. I was just listening to Mother Jones did a big write-up on T-Rex arms. I didn't realize that. A company down in Virginia, and they got on the radar. So anytime someone gets into Mother Jones, I'm always curious because, well, Mother Jones is just such hackery, but also that's a pretty high mark of being on the radar of the left. So I was listening to another podcast on the way in. T-Rex Inc. Tell them about our T-Rex Inc. people.
I have 2 T-Rex Inc. shirts, and I love them. I especially love my Trump tank top that I wear to the gym often and scare people early in the morning. Actually, I don't think I scare people, but I always hope that it's going to spark up a conversation, or at least that it'll get a smile and a nod. And if you have a funny or cool or politically provocative shirt from T-Rex Inc., you can walk around thinking the same thing. And the election is very, very close, and just because the election day is going to be over doesn't mean that the political turmoil will be over. So wearing your Trump 2024 vaporwave tank top, or your Secret Service training department with the cow on the roof, it's still going to be funny, it's still going to be cool, and it's still going to be provocative even after the election. So it's not too late to use the code CAUCUS30 to get 30% off an awesome t-shirt or mug, or are there hats? Or hat on T-Rex Inc. I haven't gotten a hat.
The hats are new. I don't have a hat either. Yeah. The hats are cool. I'm coming for the hats. And you are, by the way, not wrong about making sure you go out in that. It's just we had, not to embarrass anybody, but that was, my wife trips out to the store for something last night, and she goes out in her Secret Service training department cow t-shirt and a dark MAGA hat, and I was like, you have never been more attractive to me, at least this week. This is something. There's awesome. Some good swag if you want to, just reignite the flames with your spouse or something on a daily basis. Buy some T-Rex swag. There you go. That's my plug. Oh man. But I'm tripping through the chat here. There's a lot of stuff.
TRexInc.com. Thank you, T-Rex Inc.
TRexInc.com. Thank you for sponsoring the program. Make sure you go Caucus 30, the whole 9 yards. Georgia, someone talking about, Marcus is saying Georgia's systems are so excellent. Many anticipate 80% results by 8 p.m. According to Atlas Intel, and I did notice this, the Atlas Intel was the most accurate polling of 2020. As much as I don't care about polls, Atlas Intel got the closest, and they say Trump's up by 3 in Georgia. I think it's going to be 3 to 4 in Georgia, is my guess. But here, interesting, silent, secret Gen Zers are often living in some of the most liberal cities. That, to me, is a point I was thinking about when I saw some of this information. I thought, these young people are not living out in the rural sticks where they're afraid to talk about supporting Kamala Harris. Most of these kids are living in cities where they're afraid to tell all of the surrounding people, yeah, I'm actually a Trumper. Which is, I loved. I saw some comedian talking about, Trump hats are everywhere now, but he's like, you remember back in the early days, you saw someone in a city with one of those Trump hats, and you're like, oh, you're a special one, aren't you? Like, they're just so nice because their hat does all the trash talking for them in the cities wearing it around. I thought that has flipped quite a bit.
Well,
But
yeah, and people don't really do that
interesting.
anymore because it was or people didn't do that back then. I feel like that's easier to do now because it's the political violence was a lot higher leading up to the election in 2016 than it is now.
Yeah. By the way, let me get your take on this. Just a quick thing to say because I want to go through a few other headlines before we close it out today. But I see someone here in the chat. Same thing that we see. People who you can't talk politics with. And the same thing I'm seeing here that I hear from a lot of other people and that we found in our own extended family. I can't talk politics with someone because she hates Donald Trump for moral reasons, which this commenter finds amusing considering the Harris Waltz shortcomings on many fronts. I do too. This one is very interesting to me. This may just be a side tangent. We don't go very far down. Do you have anyone around you in that world that's still, oh, well, Donald Trump is such an immoral man? This seems to be a very increasingly small but vibrantly animated section of Never Trumpers. The immoral stuff, because I'm like, have you looked around? Have you looked at the border? Have you looked in the womb? Have you looked? I could name a bunch of places where I'm like, yeah, he's not perfect, but he's not evil. These other people, however, what they're advocating for,
their number one
purely
policy
disgusting.
is infanticide.
Yes,
that's what they're running on.
It absolutely is. So I kind of wonder, do you see that anymore? Do you feel like that's gotten smaller? Is that still there?
I think it's definitely gotten smaller.
I would tend to say so, but also as they get smaller, they get louder and stronger in their beliefs.
I think that those that are like that these days are absolutely, dyed-in-the-wool Never Trumpers, and there's no saving them. Because we're 5 days out from the election. Like, good luck. If it's taken them, it's been 8 years since he went down the escalator. 9 years.
We'll see.
And if they're still not over that by now, then whatever. You can have it.
And see, to me, that's one of those. I don't think this is a conversation necessarily for between now and Election Day. This is a conversation to start having about after Election Day, because we're going to have to, the plan is to just go in and do 4 years of damage every single day to the deep state.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, we're going to have to be messaging in a whole new way. And this is, I'm excited, and I have other people I want to bring in. We're going to do a whole big off-the-record conversation that might go subscriber only for what does the Republican Party look like in 2028 and beyond. Because I think that's a big conversation to be had about what the values are, what we have to be doing governmentally, what we ought to be advocating for, who the leader of that could potentially be based on who's on the scene right now. Although, to be honest, our vice presidential candidate wasn't even on the political scene more than 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
4 years ago.
He was not a political guy
who knows?
In 2020. That was the funniest thing about watching Hillbilly Elegy. Those based on real life movies where it gets to the end and it tells you where the people are now.
Right.
And all it had to say about J.D. Vance at that point was he now lives in Ohio with his wife and 3 kids. And it's like that's all there was to say about him just a few years ago when that movie was made.
Right. So that might, who we see now might not be applicable for 2028, to be completely clear. I mean, Donald Trump we knew about, and he talked about running for president, but not until 2015 did, I'm going to run for president. We're like, yeah, we've heard this before. And then he comes down the golden escalator, and we're like, oh my gosh, he's running for president. He's actually going to do it. And then it wasn't until pretty much October of 2016 that you realized, holy cow, he's going to be the president.
Yep.
But not according to the polls. Let's remember that.
I didn't think he was going to be president until after he won the election. I did not think he was going to win.
Oh man, I felt that way. I was slow on the primaries because I have all this I've worked in politics too long. I have all this basic political. I'm like, it's just not going to happen. It's just going to end up not working. I love what he's saying, but it's not going to work. And then we got to the very end of the primary process. I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to do it. Then we get to the very end of the general, and I was like, holy cow, he's going to do it. But it's not like I had to predict. I didn't predict it that far out.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
But yeah, that's going to be a great conversation for afterwards, but we should put a pin in that for later.
Right. So, the Supreme Court this week allowed Virginia to continue removing illegal non-citizen voters from the voter rolls. That was going on in Virginia. Thank you, Glenn Youngkin, and the good people.
Insane that's even something they have to allow people to do. Like, these people should not legally be able to vote. Why are they on the voter rolls?
Right, they're non-citizens. What's even more insane is that 3 of our U.S. Supreme Court justices voted to block Virginia from removing non-citizens from the voter rolls. So let that sink in. 3 of the top judges in the United States of America said, no, they can't take people who aren't citizens off of the voter rolls in Virginia. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You want to run that one by me again slowly, and listen to yourself while you're saying it.
Right.
But I mean, that's the reality is we have 3 radical activists on the court. I mean, this is a no-brainer. Even John Roberts voted for this. Said, yeah, of course they can.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. No offense, John Roberts, if you're
That's
listening.
such basic election integrity, just to
Yes.
make sure that the people who are going to vote are the people that are supposed to be able to vote, and that the people who are not legally able to vote don't get to vote. That's so basic. That's such like a basic element of election integrity in our democracy. We have to uphold our democracy. Okay, then uphold our freaking democracy. It's absurd.
It is.
Like the SAVE Act. You know,
The SAVE Act. It's
was
so
contentious.
so basic. Let me hold on. Let me pull this here. I am so. By the way, what we're arguing over here with the Virginia stuff, this was the state of Virginia had removed 1,600 individuals who were believed to not be U.S. citizens from Virginia voter rolls in recent weeks, and it wildly, someone took them to court over that, and a lower judge agreed essentially and said, yeah, you can't do that, you're blocked. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit found unanimously that taking the names off the voter rolls within 90 days of an approaching federal election violated the National Voter Registration Act. And then the Supreme Court had to come back 6-3 in an emergency order and say, no. In this case, Virginia is allowed to do that. But what gets really interesting, these little nitpicky things are extremely important. When you go back and look, like I'm clicking through here. When you go back and look at the 2020 results, here we go. Virginia, specifically, Virginia was decided by only about, let me see here, 2.4 million to 1.96 million. Virginia was only decided by less than 500,000 votes. So it was big, but a few thousand here, a few thousand there, a few thousand there, all of a sudden you're in business and you're looking at a very, very different result. Looking at 20, and again, this is 2020 where who knows what went on because the cheat was in full effect. But I mean, then it gets even wilder. You get over to somewhere like Pennsylvania and you realize it was only about 80,000 votes that Trump lost by. So now 1,600 starts looking even bigger when you get up to a place like Pennsylvania and you got to wonder what's going on. It's these little victories are incredibly important and they're a big deal to fight over and over and over again. So
yeah, well, and so each fraudulent name on the voter rolls is an opportunity for somebody who is injecting false votes into the system to, it doesn't even matter. That's how we end up with dead people voting or something like that. It doesn't even matter if somebody shows up to the polling place and votes under that name. Just the fact that there is a vote there possible to cast gives the opportunity for riggers and hackers to cast those votes for somebody.
Yeah, it's voter rolls is the most basic cleanup that has to happen on election integrity. So by the way, I guess we made a couple comments, but we didn't really talk about the biggest factor this week, the garbage comment. I was greatly hoping, was it Tuesday night? Today's Thursday. Yesterday, Tuesday night, Kamala Harris has her big final pitch speech in front of the White House, and Joe Biden doesn't go, so he doesn't upstage her. What happens? Joe Biden goes on CNN and responds to the comedian who made a jab at Puerto Rico, which no one really seemed to mind except for the left. He's a roast comedian. What do you expect out of him? And then Joe Biden says, people in Puerto Rico aren't garbage. The only garbage I see out there floating around is the Trump supporters, or is his supporters, he says. And you look and I thought, did he just say that on CNN? Did he really just, that's worse than Hillary's basket of deplorables. Irredeemable? Oh, actually, I thought irredeemable was worse. I agree. But then, my first thing that I think I texted you and a bunch of other people on the internet went alive too, Donald Trump needs to get in a garbage truck and go on a ride-along this week, and he wins all 538 electoral votes. Done. I'm being a little hyperbolic. Obviously, he won't. But sure enough, yesterday in Green Bay, Wisconsin, the plane pulls up on the tarmac. He hops out in an orange safety vest, gets in a giant Trump-branded garbage truck, and then he wears the safety vest for the rest of the Green Bay, Wisconsin rally. On stage. If you haven't seen it, it was wonderful. You really should. He went on a 5-minute tirade. The man's hilarious. He went on a 5-minute tirade about how, he wasn't going to wear it. I'm going to wear my jacket. And then they told me, sir, you actually look thinner in the vest. And he's like, then I was sold. All right, I'm wearing it the whole night. I might wear this the rest of the election. And he kind of flashes, the little reflectors. He's funny. He's authentically hilarious. That came through in the Rogan interview. It comes through in all the interviews. And then the garbage thing, to seize on that with actually pulling up in the garbage truck and doing everything, it's just like they keep piling on an extra 10,000 votes, an extra 50,000 votes every time this happens. Whether it's people exiting because they're done with the left because Joe Biden killed Kamala's chances even more, or if it's people who are like, all right, I'm finally voting for the orange man.
Yeah.
They're doing everything they can to
Trump's
to
interview
lose.
on Joe Rogan is now his second most popular interview ever.
Trump or Rogan?
On Rogan.
So it's the second most popular Rogan interview of all of Rogan's podcasts.
And I could see it taking the first slot because it's only 5 days old, and the other one is 5 years old, and Trump's is only 20 million behind.
Only 20 million. 40? Is it past 40
41
million?
million versus 62 million, which is an episode about aliens. So that's pretty popular.
Which he tried to talk about. He tried to talk about space, and then Trump just brought it back to Elon Musk. The synopsis of the Rogan interview for 3 hours, because I finally got a chance to watch it. If you all didn't, I mean, you should, or send it to people who you know who are Trump hesitant. I think that he does an excellent job humanizing himself for people. He's funny. He's congenial.
He's extremely knowledgeable.
I was about to say he's smart, man. He knows a lot about a lot of things.
Just the way
and
he could talk off the cuff about the Civil War.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. I think he knows a lot about a lot of things, and he knows a little about everything. That's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
You can't hardly mention a topic that he can't figure out something he knows and then move the conversation where he does. He's just a well-versed guy. But then the drama went down with that. If you were looking for it and didn't see it, Kamala Harris didn't decline the Joe Rogan interview, which I would have loved to have seen. It would have been probably very terrible. She didn't decline it. They just said, no, we're not coming to you. You have to come to us, and you only get an hour. And Rogan's people were like, no, you need to come here. You need to come here. And I don't know about the hour nonsense.
Right.
So it just kind of stalemated. But then it was announced that same day that they said that's what was going on, and the offer was still out for her for Tuesday. They announced J.D. Vance is going to come in and record Wednesday, and that'll come out later this week. Which
it's out 52 minutes ago.
I was about to say, I haven't been refreshing this morning. How long is it?
It is 3 hours and 17 minutes.
Oh my gosh! And the number one out of all of these interviews that Trump and Vance have been doing, the number one thing I remember someone on J.D. Vance, I think it was on the Theo Von podcast, was like, "This is the guy you told me was weird. This is the most normal dude I've ever seen."
Yeah, I saw you sent me that comment.
I'm like, this is probably one of the greatest, just politically speaking. I think that their round of doing all of these big, giant, long form podcasts has been one of the biggest political / media upsets ever. It took the power away from the fake news media, just like his use of Twitter did in 2016. You could go back and find historic markers. That one's been wild. So I've greatly enjoyed it because it really lets you get to know the person a lot more than just the political personality.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, I don't really have anything else to add except for go vote.
Go vote. Vote early. Vote often. Vote multiple times. Kidding. Don't do that. But
we do not support election fraud.
We do not support election fraud. We do not support incendiary devices and ballot boxes. We do not support any of these things. But we do support getting. Oh, by the way, did you see the Elon Musk $1 million giveaway was in fact that lawsuit successfully put a pause on their $1 million giveaway because the Philadelphia DA, despite the Department of Justice and everyone else in the federal agency saying that may violate election laws. Well, it might be against the law. Well, it could be against the law. Is it or is it not, dudes? I thought you're the law enforcers here.
Right.
The Philadelphia DA filed a lawsuit against Elon Musk and said your $1 million giveaway for being registered to vote and signed into your petition violates our gaming and lotteries laws here in Pennsylvania. So a judge put a pause on the $1 million giveaway.
Yep.
Which didn't have the condition of voting for a certain person, by the way. They didn't ask. If you were registered and you signed their petition of values, you're in the deal. So, anyway, there's a lot happening.
There's lottery and giveaway laws those can snag you.
They can. I guess the last thing to say is we'll keep track of everything. Make sure, I don't know if you'll be doing a lot of live tweeting. We're not going to have another episode before Election Day. Go and vote. Don't let yourself get caught not voting. The early voting, I'm going to the election. I'm going on Election Day because my county's not going to have Maricopa County level. Oh, we ran out of this. Oh, there's a flood here. I mean, I say that. Anything could happen. but I don't have any reasonable expectation. I'm going on election day. If you do, if you have a reasonable expectation that you may not be able to participate for a reason of your doing or someone else's, go vote. Make sure you get it locked in because we need every single vote all the way up and down. We got a bunch of amendments here in Missouri that have to be defeated. There's a bunch of amendments nationwide that have to be defeated or supported. There's candidates that need to go through. You can't just put through Donald Trump. You have to put through a Republican House and a Senate, even if you don't like that Republican. I'm super pumped about the person running in my congressional district. I have neighbors that aren't so pumped. But you know what? Both of those are still votes that will likely swing toward Trump's leadership in the U.S. House of Representatives, and he has to have that majority. Otherwise, we're just going to have obstruction after impeachment, after obstruction, after nomination failure. It'll be terrible. We have to have confirmation power and some spending power. You need to vote all the way up and down to make sure that that happens in your districts. And we won't get a chance to say it to you before then, but then if you want to follow us, make sure Unauthorized Caucus across the socials. You'll find us at Based Ryan Height, at Real Dr. Monzo on X. We'll be talking about stuff between now and then. Over on the radio side, I'll be live streaming from 6 to 10 p.m. election night. We'll be talking about it. So there's a lot of opportunities if you want to kind of pay attention to what's going on, but not have to just sit there and get sucked into don't get into the horse race, like I said earlier. Hit us up. Make sure you're following us because we're only going to be talking about some things that matter as we're looking at election night, November 5, 2024.
See you next week.
Oh, whatever it comes from the bunker. Who knows what's coming? Folks, maybe we'll see you next Thursday, or maybe we'll just be dead and tired. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Have a good week, and we'll see you next one on Caucus.